Welcome to XFO Intelligence. Today we are talking about dissolving complexity and about the architecture of antifragile strategy in the age of AI. We are living through a period where the speed of change has permanently outrun the usefulness of traditional planning. Geopolitical fractures are multiplying. Technology is evolving faster than most organizations can absorb it. Markets are reacting in real time to signals that are often incomplete, distorted, or amplified by machines. In that environment, a linear plan built from the top down is not simply old-fashioned. It can become actively dangerous. For strategic leaders, family offices, and institutional decision-makers, the core challenge is no longer just collecting more information. The real challenge is avoiding the traps of the AI era. One trap is the temptation to accept fast, algorithmic answers without enough scrutiny. The other is the temptation to build highly optimized systems that look efficient on paper but are deeply misaligned with long-term human values. This is exactly why a new model of strategic foresight matters. That model is Deep Augmented Thinking, or DAT. Deep Augmented Thinking moves beyond the simplistic argument of human versus AI. It is a framework for human-machine symbiosis, and its central promise is powerful. If designed correctly, strategic systems should not merely survive volatility, they should actually improve because of it. To understand why, we first have to recognize the structure of modern complexity. The defining tension of our time is the tension between velocity and validity. Velocity is the speed of AI, markets, data, and information flow. Validity is deliberate thought, ethics, structural integrity, and the patient work of deciding what is actually true and worth acting on. What makes this especially important is that the tension repeats across every scale. At the macro level, the speed of technological disruption and algorithmic capital often moves far faster than regulation, governance, and cross-border coordination. That creates openings for short-term extractive strategies to succeed briefly, while systemic fragility builds underneath. At the organizational level, family offices and institutions are under pressure to adopt AI quickly. But many of them still operate with legacy governance structures, fragmented data, and limited technical stewardship. That creates an execution gap. Move too slowly, and they fall behind. Move too fast, and they adopt systems they do not truly understand. At the cognitive level, the problem becomes even more personal. Human beings are wired for ease. When an AI system produces a fast, polished, confident answer, the easiest response is to accept it. But that convenience can weaken judgment. It creates a kind of cognitive autopilot, where scrutiny drops and the risk of absorbing false or hallucinated outputs quietly rises. A serious methodology has to address all three levels at once, and this is where DAT becomes especially interesting. The first counterintuitive insight is that the human role changes. In older models, the strategist acts like a router. Information comes in, the human processes it, and the human directs the final answer. In a hyper-complex world, that model breaks down. There is simply too much information, too much interaction, and too much volatility. DAT reframes the human as a gardener. The strategist no longer manually constructs every path. Instead, the human sets the conditions of the system. That means defining strategic intent, establishing ethical guardrails, and shaping the environment in which multiple AI agents can explore possible pathways. The human does not become less important. The human becomes more important, but in a different way. The job is not to be the soil. The job is to tend the garden. The second insight is that friction is not the enemy. In many organizations, slow thinking is treated like a handicap. But in strategic systems, human cognitive friction can act like a stabilizer. Without deliberate verification, rapid AI outputs can cause the whole decision network to oscillate. The system starts chasing noise, overfitting to short-term signals and mistaking motion for insight. A thoughtful human pause changes that. It acts like damping in a complex system. It reduces chaotic swings. It gives the network enough stability to distinguish a durable signal from temporary excitement. In that sense, friction is not a bottleneck. It is one of the things preventing collapse. The third insight may be the most surprising of all. Ethics is not a drag on performance. Ethics is an accelerator. Why? Because constraints help systems converge. In a vast search space, a system without boundaries can spend enormous energy exploring options that are legally risky, morally unsound, strategically brittle, or simply false. But when ethical principles are embedded as non-negotiable constraints, the search space becomes smaller, cleaner, and more actionable. Bad pathways are eliminated early. Hallucinations, gray zone tactics, and exploitative logic can be pruned before they waste decision energy. In that sense, ethics does not slow strategic intelligence. It helps focus it. So what does this look like when the world is hit by a shock? Imagine a sudden geopolitical decoupling, a sharp market dislocation, or a flash crash. A rigid, top-down plan tends to shatter under that kind of pressure. Teams pause. Escalations begin. Everyone waits for a new instruction from the center. But a deep, augmented thinking ecosystem behaves differently. Because intelligence is decentralized, the loss of one strategic pathway does not freeze the whole system. Resources shift. Alternative routes begin to surface. Dormant options become active. The network reorganizes around the disruption. This is what antifragility starts to look like in practice. Not just resistance, adaptation with gain. Even more importantly, the network can begin to identify weak nodes on its own. If one AI process is repeatedly fed poor quality data or starts producing hallucinated reasoning, it becomes a dead end. The wider system can reduce trust in that node and shift attention elsewhere. In effect, the architecture becomes self-healing. For leaders who want to move from philosophy to implementation, 3 interventions stand out. First, force transparency into information flows. AI-driven recommendations should always include confidence levels and source provenance. When uncertainty becomes visible, blind trust becomes harder. Second, hard code ethics into the rules of the institution. Ethical systems design should not be a speech after the fact. It should be a formal condition of strategic approval. Third, move beyond monolithic AI tools. Complex strategy is better served by multi-agent orchestration, where specialized systems can debate, simulate, challenge, and prune possible actions before a human reviews the strongest options. The future of high-level problem-solving will not belong to the fastest processor alone, and it will not belong to the most stubborn traditionalist either. It will belong to those who can design ecosystems where human wisdom and machine intelligence strengthen one another. Deep, augmented thinking offers a blueprint for that future. By embracing the role of the gardener, using friction as a stabilizer, and treating ethics as an accelerator, leaders can cut through modern noise and build strategies that are not only resilient, but anti-fragile. If you found this episode valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to the XFO Intelligence podcast channel. For feedback, or if you would like more information about our new Thought Leadership on Demand service, email xfointelligence@gmail.com. Disclaimer: this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment, legal, or strategic advice. Always conduct independent due diligence before making decisions.